Hello and good morning. How's everybody doing today? This is Rich Harshaw from Monopolize Your Marketplace, and we've got a sort of a different topic today. I'm not going to focus on how to write marketing on our strategic marketing webinar. We're going to talk about how to get your brain to work properly to get you where you're trying to go. This is something I call your most important number, and this is something that I utilize in my own business. And I hadn't really thought much about it until I was at an MYM Live training session last year sometime, and I was talking to one of the attendees, and I walked them through this process of determining a most important number. And I'll tell you what, sometimes when you're going over an idea with somebody, you can see the proverbial light bulb go off over their head. Well, I'm telling you, man, the light bulb really went off over this guy's head. It was visible and it was interesting, and I thought, I'm going to start to play with this process a little bit. So this is really just a way to get you to look at your business a little bit different. It's a goal-setting type of a scenario, but it's a way to help you see things a little bit more clearly, a little more definitively. You know, the hallmark of Monopolize Your Marketplace from a marketing standpoint is to say things with power, precision, and passion. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to look at your business with a certain level of precision in terms of goal setting that's going to allow you to then have power to achieve that goal, okay? So that's kind of the introduction to this topic. As you can see, it says the missing link to where you are now and between where you are now and where you want to be. Now, this is a pretty short webinar, so this isn't going to take a whole lot of time to go through. So just pay close attention, right? So like it says, goal setting made simpler. So let me ask you this, and play along with this as we go, okay? What is your goal for your business? And I'm talking about financially, okay? There's lots of ways to have goals about your business, but I'm talking about financially. That's one of the more important business goals, is what's your financial goal? And then, of course, what is your plan for getting there? Now, if I ask 100 companies, I say, well, what's your financial goal for your business? About 98 of them are going to say, oh, well, my financial goal is to do X dollars in sales per year. And they're going to couch their answer in terms of annual sales volume, okay? We do a lot of work, obviously, in the home improvement arena. So we might say, okay, what do you want to do in sales? I say, well, in 2012, we did $1 million in sales. In 2014, we'd like to do $2 million in sales. And this year, 2013, you know, we're gunning for, 1.4 or something like that. Problem with this approach is that it's really hard to wrap your arms around that incremental $400,000 in sales. And what are you going to do to get there? And how's that going to work out? And it really seems to be a non-starter for a lot of people. It's just some arbitrary number that doesn't really empower and motivate people to achieve it. Now, maybe you're the exception, and I'm not saying that this absolutely won't work. I'm saying there's just a better way to do it. That's all I'm trying to say. So here's a better question. First, this is a series of questions. As you'll see here, there's going to be a lot of questions in this webinar today. What products do you sell, and what percentage of your business does each represent? So think about that for a minute. In my business, we sell insider memberships. You guys are all familiar with that because you bought one. And the insider membership comes with certain fulfillment packages. We also sell in our business fulfillment services. So let's say you need to print and mail some postcards. Well, we can help you with that. We also sell CDs and books and things like that. That's a way that we make money. We also make money by going to conferences and getting paid to speak. These are all different ways that we make money. But if you look at all of the ways that my company makes money, and you said, excuse me, what's the biggest, fattest apple? It's definitely our insider program. It's what we call our bread and butter product, okay? So let's say for a home improvement company that they do 60% windows, 25% siding, 10% roofing, and 5% other stuff. Now, you fill these numbers in for yourself. I don't care what your numbers are. It doesn't matter what they are. It just matters that we know what they are. Maybe you do mostly kitchen and bathroom remodeling. I talked to a company yesterday. They said, oh, we do kitchens and bathrooms and closets. And I said, so what percentage of your sales in dollars, not in units sold, but in dollars, is kitchens? And they said 75%. Okay, boom, there's our bread and butter. They said, well, we do almost as many units of bathrooms, but because the dollars are 3 times, 4 times, 5 times bigger in kitchens, we actually do most of our volume in kitchens. Okay, great. That's all I want to know. Here's what I'm not going to discourage you from. I'm not going to discourage you, if you're the company in the example right here, from selling siding or roofing. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to focus on marketing the thing that is our bread and butter product, okay? In this example, windows are the bread and butter product. So here's the question for you as we go through this process. What is your bread and butter product? And you can't have two. You say, no, you don't understand. We're windows 40%, siding 40%. Okay, great. Let me ask you this question. If you could only sell one and not the other, this is hypothetical. It's okay to give an answer. You're not committing to doing anything. You're just giving an answer, okay? If you could only sell one and not the other, which would you choose? And then tell me why. Maybe you say, well, we would do windows because they're easier to sell, or there's more jobs available. Or maybe you would say siding because each job is worth more money and we can accomplish more sales volume with fewer number of sales. It doesn't matter to me what the answer is. It just matters that you know what it is and there's a good rationale behind it. Because for this exercise, for this most important number, we have got to focus in on your bread and butter product, okay? Again, by way of review, you don't have to forego, like in the hypothetical example, everything else you do, but we do want to be able to focus in on one thing, all right? Now, next question. How many sales of your bread and butter product do you make in an average month? And what are the average sale price and the margin on a typical sale? We need to know the financial ramifications of your bread and butter product. So let's say that you do an $8,000 average sale with a $4,000 average margin, and you do 5 to 10 sales a month. Now, if you've been around me very much, you'll know that I don't allow ranges when people are giving me numbers. I only allow definitive, specific numbers. So you say, well, you know, it depends. In the winter months, it's lower, and in the summer months, it's higher. Okay, great. I don't really care. Just average it out. I need to get it. We need to have something to work with here, okay? And so we come up with the number 8. Now, again, this is hypothetical. I would encourage you as we go through this process to have a piece of paper and a pen handy and write these things down for yourself. You should have written before what your total goal was in annual sales. Now, the next question was, what is your distribution of things that you sell? I gave you my example for my company, and then I gave you an example on the screen for a home improvement company. I want you to write yours. And then we want to determine, well, what is your bread and butter product? Then we want to look at it and say, okay, what's your average sale, the average margin, and how many sales per month? And as you will also see, I really don't care how much average sales are. It doesn't mean a whole lot to me. I only care what your average margin is, because that's the money you can take and keep out of the sale. All right, so we've got 8 sales per month. To get your business where it fills all your financial goals, how many bread and butter sales per month do you need? Okay, now this doesn't mean ignore all of the other types of sales you have. Account for those. But to get where you need to be financially, and you know what, I'm primarily talking to business owners here. If you're the marketing person, you know, maybe you don't even really know. I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't. I'm really talking to business owners to get your business to where it fills all your financial goals. And I'm talking on not just a business level, I'm talking on a personal level. Now, again, not everybody in this whole, okay, I already know what's happening here. Here we go. To get your business to where it fills all your financial goals, how many bread and butter sales do you need per month? I'm talking about just focusing in on that one thing, okay? So focus in on that one thing. Now, here's the key. Here's the key. The answer to this question is your most important number. This is your most important number. Now, we're not going to end here, but I do want you to see that this is going to be a starting point for us, not an ending point. To get your business to where it fills all your financial goals. Now, here's what I've seen in home improvement. I see a lot of companies that are kind of getting by, smaller companies. I see some middle-sized companies that have decent sales, but they kind of ebb and flow, and they've got highs and lows and peaks and valleys, and they're trying to smooth it out. But here's what I've found. if you really sit down and talk to people and say, how much money do you need to make financially, personally, and I'm talking about business owners here, okay? So maybe you're the marketing director and the numbers I'm about to say, or you're like, wow, that's a lot of money. You know, that's not how much money I'm trying to. First of all, don't do this. Don't give me the ridiculous, you know, here's how much money I need to live a movie star lifestyle, you know, $10 million a year. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about realistically. How much money do you need to cover all your bills, to save for retirement, to cover your kids' college, to buy the nice things that you want to have? That's what I'm asking you. And here's what I found. For most people that I ask this question, the number comes in somewhere between $200,000 a year and $500,000 a year. And that's a pretty big range. And I don't care what the number is. Maybe your number is $1 million a year. It doesn't matter what the number is. It only matters that you know what the number is, okay? The answer to this question is your most important number. Now, let me show you something here. You think you're multitasking, think again. There's a lot of research that talks about how the human brain cannot focus on more than one thing at a time, okay? How to train your brain to stay focused. Just pulled up a couple of articles online. I've read several books on this, The Power of Focus. There's a lot of documentation on this. Here's what I'm trying to get you to do. I'm trying to get you to think about and focus in on this one important number. Again, your bread and butter. I'm being redundant for a reason because it's super important. Your bread and butter product and how many sales do you need? And I want you to focus on this because here's what's going to happen as you do this. And again, we've still got more to go here. I'm going to take you through some more evolution of this process in just a minute. We're going to get really down and dirty with your numbers. But this number is one that you can focus on. It's the one thing that you measure religiously. Now, you measure all your other stuff that you normally measure, but you measure this one thing. How are we doing against our most important number? We currently do 8. Our most important number is X. Let's go through an example here. Follow-up questions. Let's say that a guy comes to me and says, my most important number is 25. 25. If I do 25 sales per month at the $8,000, let's say it's Windows, like the example, here's the question for you. Are that many sales even available in your marketplace? Are they even available? I want you to think about that for a minute. I'm going to do a dramatic pause here, and I want you to think about it. Well, what do you think? And watch this. An R is magically going to appear on the word you. Okay. Are that many sales even? That dramatic pause was actually to fix that R. Are that many sales even available in your marketplace? Number next. How many competitors do you have? Answer, probably a lot. Well, are they getting sales? How many sales are they getting? How many sales are the competitors getting every month? How many prospects need would you sell in a given month or a given year? Think about these questions. Napoleon Hill has said, anything the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. Now, I'm going to talk to you about this. We're going to pause down on this webinar for a few minutes. We're going to talk about this concept because I want you to read the first 4 questions again. Are that many sales even available in your marketplace? Let's say that your most important number is 25 and you're currently selling 8 window jobs per month. Are there 25 window jobs available in the geographic market that you serve? Well, your competitors are selling some. The whole marketplace per month is selling how many jobs? And I want you to think about how inexplicable it is that you're getting 8 when the entire marketplace is getting what? I don't know. Let's say that there's 25 viable competitors in the marketplace and they're all getting an average of 10. That's 250. And you're getting 8? How are you only getting 8? It doesn't even make sense. Let me give you a real eye-opener, okay? One of our customers, we worked with this company last year, and then we're no longer working with them. We finished everything we needed to for them. The company's called Hanson's out of Detroit. Hanson's Windows is selling more windows than just about anybody. They do roofs also, they do siding, but their bread and butter is windows, okay? Not to discount that roofs are a really, really important part of their business, but their bread and butter is windows. They're doing, I think they did in 2012, somewhere in the neighborhood of around $60 million in completed sales. $60 million. These guys are running over 100 appointments a day. A day. How is that possible that in Detroit, this is the economic armpit of the entire country, according to the rest of the country, maybe not according to Brian Elias, who runs Hanson's Windows and who's doing just fine, thank you. How is it possible that they run 100 appointments a day? Now, they're in Lansing, and they're in, I think 6 or 7 total towns. So Detroit's their major hub, and then they've got some smaller towns, out of Kalamazoo, I'm not even sure where they are, but things like that, okay? But over 100 appointments a day, something like 50 sales a day, 40, 50 sales a day. It's insane. How are they doing that while you're doing not that? How is that even possible? And the answer is, well, it has to do with this thing in red at the bottom. Anything the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. Now, I first read the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, where I saw this quote when I was 15 years old, courtesy of my father, who's a guy that is into that kind of stuff. And he took me at a young age and he said, read this book. And I read the book, and it was weird and strange and interesting and fascinating and scary all at the same time. It's kind of a weird book. Napoleon Hill is part weird. There's no question about that. And at age 15, when you're reading about a chapter called Sexual Transmutation, you're thinking, whoa, Dad, what is this you're giving me? It's weird. But I remember this. Anything the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. And I used to, when I was younger and I was uninitiated and I didn't really understand, I used to read this as follows. Anything the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Anything the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Now, I'm a little bit older, I'm a little bit wiser, and I now read it differently. I read it now as follows. Anything the mind can conceive and that the mind can believe, it then can achieve. And there's a pause between conceive and believe. And this is where we get into trouble with the goal that we want to do $2 million in sales next year, and we only did $1 million next year. Because here's what happens. You look at this number and you say, how long have you been in business? Well, we've been in business for 13 years, or we've been in business for 20 years, or we've been in business for 3 years, whatever it is. Typically, it's a fairly long number. And here's the equation that's really, truly, honestly being run in your brain. Now, it's below the surface, and it's hard to really notice. But the equation goes like this. We've been in business for 13 years, and in the 13 years, we've been able to make it up to $1 million. And guess what? You were probably doing more than $1 million when the recession hit, and then you went down. And now you're maybe back up to $1 million, or you're still recovering, whatever. I don't want to impose that on you, but that's probably true. And now, in a 1 to 2 year period of time, you want to double your sales. I've got news for you. There's a reason you haven't gotten to $2 million during the first 13 years. It wasn't because you couldn't conceive of doing $2 million. You say, well, we did $2 million years ago. We're a $9 million company. Doesn't matter. Fill in the numbers for your own situation. They scale perfectly, okay? You're not doing $2 million in sales already, and it took you 13 years to get to $1 million in sales, not because you couldn't conceive that it's possible to do $2 million in sales. In fact, you look around, you see other companies, you hear me talk about Brian Elias, not to mention 5,000 other companies that are doing over $1 million, and they're probably doing $2 million in sales in the same industry, and you realize and understand and look at it and say, well, it's possible. It's conceptually, I can conceive it. But you do not believe it. And this whole exercise of identifying your most important number is trying to strip things down to their bare essence so that you can start to believe it, okay? Anything the mind can conceive, it cannot achieve. I can conceive that man can go to the moon. I can't personally get there, okay? I can conceive that Donald Trump is worth $1 billion or that Bill Gates is the richest philanthropist on the planet. I can conceive that, but I don't believe that I can do it. You say, well, geez, Rich, you got negative thinking. Well, if I could believe it, I'd already be either there or well on my way. Things have to grow and be built incrementally, okay? So what we've got to work on is not conception, but belief. Now, here's some real questions for you. How is it that you keep getting about the same number of sales? Why? Why is that? Next, what are you afraid of? And the knee-jerk reaction to this question is, well, I'm not afraid of anything. What do you mean, what am I afraid of? I have no fear. And you know what? It's not true. It's not being genuine with yourself. It's being disingenuous. And here's what you're really afraid of, okay? Let's just break it down. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of poverty. You're afraid of disgrace. You're afraid of not being smart enough to figure it out. Now, those things are not unique to you. Those things are unique to human beings. You're afraid of failure. You're afraid of poverty. You're afraid of disgrace. You're afraid of being not smart enough to figure it out. Let's state that one a little bit different. Being stupid. You say, well, no, Rich, I'm not afraid of those things. Well, I would tend to disagree with you. You are afraid of those things. And here's how I know. Because I'm afraid of those things. And as a human, we're all afraid of those things. The key is to master those fears and to be able to take the actions that are holding you back. So the next question, what actions could you and should you be taking to get there but consistently fail to do so? The things that you're not doing are the things that you should be doing. And here's a good question. It's not on the screen, but let me ask it to you anyway. What are the things that you're doing instead of the things that you could be doing and should be doing? And here's the answer to that question. A bunch of freaking crap. That's the answer to that question. You're doing a bunch of freaking crap. You're checking your online balance. You're making sure that the bills are paid. You're making sure that your crews are in the right place. And you say, well, what are you talking about? Those are all things that need to be done. Well, yeah, duh, of course they all need to be done. But do they all need to be done by you? Seriously? You need to get the checkbook out and write the check to the guy who came and delivered the materials? Really? I remember listening to an audiobook by Michael Dell. It's called The Dell Way or something. This was years ago, probably 15 years ago I listened to this audiobook. It was on a cassette tape. That's how old it was. And he said a guy came into his office. This was during the phase of his business where Dell had started to take off, but it wasn't what we know Dell to be right now, or what it was at its highlight, I guess, or its heyday, whatever. But it was a growing, happening, money-making company. And a guy walked in and said, "Hey, Michael, where's the key to the Coke machine?" And Michael opened his top desk drawer, and he started looking, and he opened his other drawer, and he started, looking through all this crap that was in his desk, and he said it just dawned on him. Why am I the guy that has the key to the Coke machine? I think we're past the point of our company where I should be the guy that people come to when the Coke machine jams. They should probably go to somebody else. And he found the key, and he gave it to the guy, and he said, take this key and never bring it back. I don't care who it goes to, but get it out of my desk. And I'm asking you to get the Coke key out of your desk and give it to somebody else because it's holding you back from getting where you're trying to go. Now, this is a multifaceted discussion we're having today. There's a lot of things going on here. A lot of it's psychological. A lot of it's human nature. A lot of it's how do you run your business. A lot of it's what do you believe. But I want you to hear it, because I think there's value in it, okay? So question on the screen says, what actions could you and should you be taking to get there but consistently failed to do so? And then the reciprocal question that is not on your screen but I want you to think about is, what are the things that you are doing that you probably shouldn't be doing because probably somebody else should be doing it, so that you can focus on the things that will really get you to what? Your most important number. Because I'm going to tell you something right now. I want you to think of your business this way. You've got a most important number. We already defined that as the number that gets you to where you want and need to be financially, right? Look forward in your brain. If you can believe it, fine. But if you can only conceive it, that's okay too. I want you to think about, what does your business look like when you're consistently hitting your most important number? In the case of this example is 25. And the answer is, you will never get to 25. You will never get to your most important number unless you empower those around you. You have systems in place to handle things. You remove yourself as a bottleneck in your company. You remove yourself as the person that has to be gone to for every little thing. And when you do that, when you get to your most important number, 25 in the example, here's what you'll find. You've got a company that's running smooth, that's running free, that's running substantially without you, that is going to allow you to literally be freed from that business. And you say, well, I don't want to be freed from the business. Fine. I don't care if you want to be freed from the business. Stay in it. Do whatever you want. But don't mistake, I don't want to be freed from my business, from I'm going to bog down my company by inserting myself into every step of everything, including the freaking Coke machine key. Okay? See how this works? Next question. Can you believe an extra $1 million in sales? This is the 25. This is the, not the most important number. This is the, we're trying to go from 1 million to 2 million. And the answer is you probably can't. Can you believe can you believe an extra 17 sales per month? See the difference? Do you see the difference? All righty. All right. So here's the difference. We're trying to get you to believe in 17 sales per month. Now, here's the key. Beliefs are like tabletops. Here's my experience. Take whatever you believe and write it on the top of a table. This is a metaphor, okay? Not real. Don't actually write it on a tabletop, but metaphorically. Whatever the belief is written on the tabletop. Let's take the example of losing weight, because this is one that everybody either has personal history with or has probably been around somebody who's got a personal history with this, okay? So if you're trying to lose weight, the belief that goes on the table, let's say that the man weighs 250 pounds. He's got a big gut. He carries it well, but he knows he's, let's just use the word that's true, fat. And his doctor in a checkup says, you know, based on these charts over here, you ought to really weigh somewhere around 170 to 180 pounds. And the guy starts thinking, geez, you know, I haven't weighed 170 pounds since my freshman year in college. He's 45 years old now, and he's been accumulating fat for 25 years. Here's what goes on the tabletop. The tabletop says, I weigh 250 pounds. This is a belief. We're going to call it an identity. Now, I don't want to mix up this word identity with the marketing word identity that we use, although there's a lot of similarity, okay? The identity is the man thinks in his mind, I weigh 250 pounds, and that's just the way it is. And this man, psychologically, below the surface, without consciously thinking about it, will battle to keep himself at that weight. Have you ever noticed that weights tend to they tend to stay the same? You say, no, weights tend to fluctuate. They go up and down. Right, but they fluctuate because they stay at the central point. So the guy weighs 250 pounds, and maybe over the holidays he lets himself go and he gets up to 260, and then he diets and he gets down to 240, and guess where he ends up? 250. Why? Because that's his belief about himself. I'm a man who weighs 250 pounds. And then he goes on a diet, and it doesn't work. And he goes on a diet, and it doesn't work. And he goes on a diet, and it doesn't work. And then he starts to build legs under this table that say, not only am I 250 pounds, but I cannot be less than 250 pounds. And the legs become evidence to support the belief, okay? The legs become evidence to support the belief. Now, here's what I want to ask you. Does your table look more like this? Or does your table look more like this? And what we're talking about is the solidity, the solidified, how solid those beliefs are. And when a man tries to lose weight and get down from 250 pounds to 170 or 180 pounds, and he goes to the gym and he loses 30 pounds, but then he gains it back, and then he buys a Nordic track and he loses 20 pounds, and then he gains it back, and then he buys a treadmill and he never loses any pounds, and it becomes a clothes hanger. And then he goes on Nutrisystems because Mike Golick from ESPN said that it works, and he loses 8 pounds, and then he quits, and he goes back to 250. After a while, guess what? Those legs become very thick, and they say to the person, this is who I am. I weigh 250 pounds. And the key is to break down and incrementally attack the problem. There's a great story from somebody you may be familiar with. It's a gal named Susan Powder. She was a fitness guru in the late 1990s and early 2000s. You might remember her. She had the bleached white spiky haircut, and she was a little teeny thing, about 5'2", weighed maybe 105 pounds at the most. And her backstory was very interesting. It was that she was a fit, healthy, attractive young woman who had serious self-esteem issues related to issues in her childhood. And as a result, she, like many women in that situation, unfortunately latched on to a man, and she became very needy. She ended up marrying him at a very early age, and he was abusive, and he treated her like crap. But she took it, and she dealt with it because she felt like that she was not lovable by anybody else. I'm just saying. I'm just reporting the news, okay? Whether you like this story or not doesn't change the fact that this is her story. I read her book, her biography. This is what she told me. As she became depressed over her relationship, she dealt with it by eating, and she went from being a skinny little girl to a big fat woman, and she got up to where she was around, I think it was around 280 pounds. Now, you say, well, 280 pounds, I've watched TV, I've seen 600-pound people. Well, when your typical normal weight is 105 and you're now sitting at 270 or 280, this is huge. And she got to the point where she couldn't move, she couldn't get around, she couldn't walk without getting exhausted. She was embarrassed to go out. She had 2 small children, and she said she was in an abusive relationship, she was overweight, she was severely depressed, and she said the only thing that kept her from committing suicide, and she thought about it constantly, the only thing that kept her from killing herself was her kids. And it wasn't her kids per se, it was knowing that if she killed herself, that her husband would get full custody of the kids. And she had, by this time, left the husband. I left that important point out. But she didn't want her kids to go to that husband, so she didn't kill herself. Well, one day, as the story goes, she made a major decision in her life. And the major decision was, instead of sending the kids out to get the mail, she was going to go get the mail herself. And she hadn't done this in years. So she got up, she looked out to the mailbox. She lived in the Dallas area, not too far from where I live right now. She looked at the mailbox, she thought, my gosh, I can't walk that far, but she did it. She walked out there, she got the mail. She was exhausted. She had to pause and rest before she walked back into the house. And the next day she walked out and got the mail again. And the next day she walked out and got the mail again. And the next day she walked out and got the mail again. And then she got it again and again and again. And finally, after a week or two of getting the mail, she decided when she got to the mailbox that she would walk down the street to the lamp post, which was a good 40 yards down the street. So she walked down to the lamp post, exhausted. She paused, she rested, she gathered herself, walked back to the mailbox, paused again, and walked back into the house. And the next day she walked to the lamp. And the next day she walked to the lamp. And a week or two later, she walked to the second lamp post, and then eventually to the third, and then eventually around the entire block, and eventually a mile, and eventually 2 miles. And it took her months to where she could walk a couple of miles. But she did it. And she started to lose weight. And she felt better about herself. And she started to eat less. And she started to take care of herself. And she started to see positive things in her relationships with her kids. And she started thinking less about suicide. And eventually she lost weight, and she lost more weight. And it started to snowball. And it became a habit. And eventually she became, of all things, a fitness guru. Started teaching classes and got her own infomercial and became very successful. Now, I'm not trying to tell you to become Susan Powder. I'm just trying to explain to you how the brain works. The brain cannot conceive. Let me say that different. The brain cannot typically believe more than it can conceive. Okay? If the brain conceives that you can be skinny or that you can get to a certain level in your business, it's not going to believe it. Here's what the brain can believe in my experience. And this is a story that comes from the Bible. The Bible says that a master gathered 3 servants and said, I'm leaving town, and I'm going to give you each talents or units of money. And he gave one person 1 unit, 1 talent. He gave another 2, and he gave another 5. And he said, I'm going to leave, and I want you to do something with these talents. I'm going to come back, and I'm going to take an accounting. So he left, and the one that had 5 talents went into the marketplace, traded, and he turned his 5 talents into 10. The one with 2 turned his 2 talents into 4, and as the story goes, the one that had 1 talent buried it and didn't do anything with it. Sooner or later, the master came back. The day of reckoning occurred. He met with the one who had been given 5. He turned it into 10, and he said, you've been faithful over a few things. I'll make you master over many things. He was pleased with his progress. He turned it from 5 to 10. The second took his 2 and turned it to 4. The master looked at him and said, you've been faithful over a few things. I'll make you master over many things. And he sent him on his way. And then he looked at the one who had been given 1, and he said, what did you do with the talent? He said, I buried it. And he said, well, why did you bury it? And it's a very telling answer in the story. He said, I buried it because thou knowest that thou hast reapest where thou hast not sown. Now, let's look at that answer. Let's say it in more modern English. He said, you know, master, that you've reaped where you haven't sown. In other words, he accused the master of having fraudulently attained this 1 talent. And he used that as a rationale to bury it and to not do anything with it. Now, that doesn't even make sense. And guess what? Neither do your excuses or mine. I'm throwing myself in this group. Okay, I'm not trying to stand on a high horse here and point down at you. I'm on your same level. I'm looking at that mountain up there going, geez, we got to get up there. Let's get rid of these excuses. Let's throw these stones out of our packs that are weighing us down. And the master said, you know what, I'm going to take this 1 talent, we're going to dig it up, and I'm going to give it to the guy that has 10 because he's shown that he's faithful. And he cast out the servant that had 1. Well, here's what I want you to know. Beliefs are like tabletops, and you can only believe. According to this story, there's a ratio. The ratio is double, okay, 5 to 10. 2 to 4. It was a consistent ratio. And my belief is you can only see about double where you're currently at. This is just my opinion. You know, have your own opinion. This is why you dial into a webinar like this. You say, well, I don't know, I wonder what the guy's opinion is. And then you look at it and you think about it and you decide if you agree with it or not. My point here is not to have you agree with me, but to engage your brain in the conversation so you can decide for yourself. But my belief is that you can only believe about double where you're currently at. So if you weigh 250 pounds, you say, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that you can only believe a very minimal amount of loss. How much weight have you been able to lose? And the answer is 0. Well, then you can only believe double 0. Well, that's still 0. Well, let's go for 1. So here's what we tell the fat guy who needs to lose 250 pounds. If we were to create a diet program for this guy, we would typically say what? Okay, you need to run 3 days a week or walk, whatever you can do. You know, walk to the mailbox. You need to start, you know, eating more healthy. Let's get rid of the French fries and the ice cream and the sodas and all that stuff, right? And that's the program that will not work for this fat guy because in his mind, he can't accomplish all that. He can't believe that it's all possible. You know why? Because he's got this big, thick leg table that says, I've tried that and I can't do it. I'm weak. I admit it, but I can't do it. So we go to that guy and we say, look, here's what I want you to do. You need to exercise. And the guy says, oh, here we go again. I've got to exercise. Crap. What am I going to do? I can't do exercise. He said, no. This is a different exercise. You know that treadmill that you bought that you never use and it's got, you know, clothes and you're hanging stuff on it? He goes, yeah. He says, here's what I want you to do. Here's your job. I want you to get on that treadmill. I want you to put it on any speed you want, including really, really, really slow. And I want you to walk or run, whatever you want to do. Let's just say walk because you're really fat and you're probably not going to be able to run. I want you to walk on a 2.0, that's really slow, for 2 minutes, one time this week. That's it. That's all I want you to do. That is your exercise. I want you to walk on the treadmill at a 2.0 speed for 2 minutes, one time. And the guy looks at you and says, how is that going to help? And you look at him and say, don't worry about how it's going to help. Just do it. And the guy says, okay. Now, does he believe that he can achieve that? And the answer is he does. Because it's close enough to where he is now that it's possible in his brain. So he gets on there and he starts going at 2, and he says, well, this is slow, and he ups it to 2.5, and after 2 minutes he says, this is stupid, and he goes 5 minutes. Whatever, maybe he only goes 2 minutes. It doesn't matter. Here's what we've got to do. We've got to get benchmarks that are achievable, that are believable and therefore achievable, okay? This is how you incrementally change. It starts with the mailbox, then it goes to a lamppost, then a second lamppost. Here's what you do not do. You do not walk around the block the first day. You don't believe you can do it. And if you even do it, it's not sustainable because your belief with these table legs says it's not possible, okay? So let's keep going on this discussion. Just to summarize, the belief is the tabletop, the legs are the evidence that supports it, and you can only believe about double where you're currently at. So if you're doing 8 sales per month, your most important number is 25, guess what? It's really not that believable. Probably double 8 is 16 is probably the most you could believe. So set your goal at 16, but keep 25 in mind. Keep it as your conceived number, but let's move the believe number to 25, to 10, okay? Man, I got to get my brain in gear here, to 16, okay? Now, let's talk about how to get there. Let's get back to practical discussion about your business. Budgeting. To achieve 25 sales a month, you need to set a budget. 25 sales times $8,000 is $200,000 in sales. At 15%, that's $30,000 in budget. Now, we're going to start talking about numbers that your brain is going to have a conniption fit and say, well, you know, how am I going to have $30,000? I'll get to that. We're not there yet. Just be patient with me here. At 15%, you say, well, where did you come up with 15%? Well, I'm allocating 15% of the sales to marketing. That's what I'm trying to do. Set a budget. When it says set a budget, here's what I mean. Marketing budget, okay? $200,000, $30,000 in budget. You're probably already spending $9,600, which is 15% of the 8 sales you're getting. So you're going to need to spend an extra $20,400. Well, what would you spend the extra budget on? What can you do to get extra sales now? What can you do to get to that point in 2014 and 2015? Now, stick with me. This is pretty interesting stuff right here. How to get the money. Let's say that your current numbers are 8 sales, $64,000 in revenue, $32,000 in gross profit. Now, this is in your bread and butter product, right? Not in your whole company, but in your bread and butter product. Remember, this is just from before. I didn't make this up now. I'm just giving you what was there from before. Next, for each incremental sale, you make $4,000 in gross profit. Remember that? Here's how you get your budget. For each new sale, allocate 75% of the incremental gross profit to marketing. That's $3,000 of the $4,000. Allocate the other 25% to incremental overhead. Maybe you need more staff to be able to fulfill the higher number of sales. This is what we found in my business as we started to grow it. We went, geez, we've got to have more people. So we went and we got people like Dave, and we got people like Nick, and we got people like Steven, and people like Renee, and we've got web people that come on like Chris to help out Chad, and all of our departments grow, and it comes from the incremental overhead budget that we allow. But 75% is going to marketing. None of the money goes into your pocket. Now, this is where business owners particularly get bogged down. They start making a little bit more money, and they want to start stuffing it in their pockets. Don't do that. You'll have plenty of opportunity to stuff all the money you want in your pockets later, but not now. You get an extra $20,400 in marketing with an incremental 7 sales. So in other words, we've gone from 8 to 15 sales, and we've got the budget of $20,400. Now, here's the interesting part. 15 is still 10 shy of our most important number, which was 25, remember? Well, guess what happens? If we spend this budget right and we accomplish what we're trying to do, here's what's going to happen. Some of this incremental budget is going to get sales right now, and some of this incremental budget is going to get us sales in the future. And if we play our cards right, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second, then it's going to allow you to get where you're trying to go over the course of 1 to 2 years. So what do we do with that money? Spend some money on immediate sales. Get super aggressive. Use some guerrilla tactics. I did a whole webinar last week on guerrilla marketing. Look at that. See if there's anything you can do there. Get into canvassing, advertising, shows, past customers. The idea here is not to dissect specifically what to do, but to say, if I had an extra sale and I had an extra $3,000, what could I spend that on to get more incremental sales? If I had $3,000 more dollars in my marketing budget, could I turn that into an incremental 1 or 2 sales? Now, this is where everybody gets jammed up. They say, I can't afford to spend that much of that money on marketing. And my question is, why not? See, you're not spending it on marketing. You're investing it in your marketing and in your future, because your goal now is 25. Your goal is not some big nebulous, hard to believe number. It's 25. Spend the rest to begin to generate your 2014, 2015, and so on sales, advertising, hopper systems, farming. Now, I've got whole other webinars that I've allocated to these topics. So I don't have any interest today in going into, well, what do we do with this money? My biggest interest today is getting you to understand what is your important number, focus on your bread and butter products, to help you understand that your limitations are very likely self-imposed, to help you understand that incremental growth is the key, having a number that you can constantly compare against that's specific, that's believable, because you're looking at the entire marketplace saying, well, geez, I only need 25 out of 500 sales that are available, makes it a little more doable than, oh my gosh, we've only ever been able to get 8. How could we possibly get 25? And then showing you how to incrementally allocate the lion's share of the dollars that you're getting from the incremental sales. You say, well, how do I get the first incremental sales? Answer, maybe you've got to spend money that you don't have. You say, well, how do I do that? Well, maybe you take a pay cut. Oh, I can't do that. See, and this is where that whole fear comes into place. Why are you not taking the action? Fear, what did I say? Fear of failure, fear of poverty, fear of humiliation, fear of not being smart enough to figure it out. Sometimes you've just got to take a step back financially so you can take a step forward. It's like cleaning out a closet. Take a closet, a pretty good-sized closet that's an absolute unmitigated disaster, just crammed full of junk. Well, you're going to have to take all the crap out of the closet before you can put it back in and organize it. And sometimes financially, you're going to have to take a step back before you can move forward. And it's your fear of poverty, it's your fear of failure, it's your fear of humiliation, it's your fear of being too stupid to figure it out that's holding you back. Now, what do you do with the money? Again, there's whole other webinars, there's whole other strategies, but you know what? It's a lot easier for you to figure this out if your brain is focusing on your most important number, your bread and butter product, and the question that you're constantly asking yourself is, how do I get 3 more sales this month? Instead of, how do I get to $2 million in sales? See, it's not a very empowering question. How do I get 3 more sales? And if I do have 3 more sales, I've got $9,000 more dollars to achieve it. How can I spend $9,000 to get 3 sales? Now see, under normal conditions, this is a stupid situation. You would never spend $9,000 to get 3 sales. It financially doesn't make sense. But if that $9,000 is spent and half of that money gets you immediate sales and the other half starts to generate additional future sales that you can't see. See, this is where faith. Why do we talk about the Bible? Is it because I'm trying to holy roller and make you a Christian? No. It's because the principles found in the Bible, even when extracted from the Bible, are still true principles, okay? It's called, I took 5 and I turned it to 10. I took 2 and I turned it to 4. Why? Because when I had 5, I was advanced enough that I could see 10. When I was only at 2, I wasn't as advanced as the 5 guy, so I could only see 4. I ended up with less than the other guy started with, but that's okay because it's an incremental process, Susan Powder said as she walked to the mailbox and then to the lamp post, okay? See how this works? That's it. That's what I've got for you today. Figure out what your most important number is and then start working your numbers to get to it. We got a couple minutes. I'll take any questions if anybody's got any. I'll open it up on the type it in thing and let's see if you got any questions. Let's see here. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. That is what I meant to do. Okay. I don't see any questions. Any questions? Anyone? Give you 10 seconds to come up with a question, then I'm hanging up. All right. Thanks for participating. We had a good participation today. Nice crowd today. Thanks for coming. I appreciate that. I know that it's time that's valuable, and I do appreciate you spending that time with me, and hopefully you've been able to take something out of this. That's it. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you next time. Bye now.